Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today we need to have a look at which cards you need to buy from Stellar Crown. Stellar Crown has just come out. This seems like a very appropriate time to do this. So starting off, you are going to need yourself a couple copies of Ledium. When you evolve into it, you get to gust a 90 HP or less Pokemon into the active. It's gusting, it's good. It's even got a nice little attack that goes through anything if that's what you're into. But mostly here, it's for the ability, and this is very, very nice indeed. Remember, I could tell you about stuff like Hydrapple, but my rule here is very simple. These are cards that I think you need in your binder to make whatever deck you want. You're either going to play Hydrapple or you're not, but you're not going to need Hydrapple unless you are, so pick it up if you're going to play it, don't if you're not. Moving on to other cards which I think are going to make waves in a whole bunch of different places. I think you're going to need yourself some Joltik. Yeah, that's right, just regular Joltik. Jolting Charge is an absurd attack, an absolutely absurd attack, because for a single energy, you search your deck for 2 lightning and 2 grass energy and attach them to a Pokemon in any way you like. Well, that's plus 3 energy. You're going to lose one on the Joltik. But I love cards like this because my theory with Joltik is really simple. I'm going to accelerate a whole bunch of energy, and if you go and KO the Joltik, which won't be hard, it's very, very weak, I'm going to drop an unfair stamp and I'm going to put you down to a 2-card hand, and then I'm going to have lots of energy, you're going to have few cards in hand, and this is going to be hilarious. I think you need a couple copies of Zeraora here, because this is a card which is going to fit into any lightning deck. 2 energy, 140 if your opponent's got a full bench, maybe more if they're using a particular stadium we're going to mention later. This is a redonkulous card in lightning decks, and I think every lightning deck really should have 1 or 2 of these, not even necessarily in the deck, but certainly ready to put into the deck. Iron Boulder, I do think you need 1 or 2 copies of this. It does 170 for 2 energy if you can match hand sizes with your opponent. In future decks and in psychic decks, this is a good 140 HP, 170 damage hitting basic Pokemon, and I do think this could end up making a pretty big difference. You've been warned, ladies and gentlemen, you've been warned. I also think you need a copy of Metacham. 2 colorless energy, put damage counters on your opponent's active Pokemon until the remaining HP is 50. That can be used in a lot of different decks. It can be used for a double turbo energy, and there's no downside. You're not doing damage, so you're not reducing the amount of damage you do. You're placing damage counters. This is a sneaky one that I think could end up fitting into a lot of different decks. It's one I've got my eye on, put it that way. Now, Jirachi, weirdly, is another one that I quite like here. It's basically a bad version of Joltik, but it works for any energy. 1 basic energy from your discard to one of your bench Pokemon, but again, I'm using this if I'm planning around using Unfair Stamp, because honestly, that will kind of be hilarious. Kling Klang, I do think, again, deserves 1 or 2 copies in your binder, because it fits into so many different decks. Once during your turn, if this Pokemon is in your hand and your opponent has any Stage 2 Pokemon in play, and there are a bunch of those around right now, you can just play it, and then 2 energy, 130 on 140 HP Pokemon. I would have a couple copies of them sitting around, just in case. Archaludon is a Stage 1 that gives free retreat to any of your Pokemon with Metal Energy attached. They don't have to be Metal Pokemon, they just have to have Metal Energy. And for that reason, you need a couple copies of these, because this could help a whole bunch of different decks. You have been warned. Noctowl, go and get yourself 4 copies. Noctowl is absolutely full-on broken. When you evolve into it, you go and search for 2 trainer cards. It's maybe the best card in the set. Definitely top 2. Absolutely absurd. You need these. Fan Rotom, same deal. Once during your first turn, search your deck for up to 3 colorless Pokemon with 100 HP or less. A lot of decks are going to be playing Fan Rotom. Make sure you've got some. Speaking of colorless Pokemon, you can search with Fan Rotom Bouffalont. If you've got 2 in play, your basic colorless Pokemon takes 60 less damage. It's a phenomenal card. fits into a bunch of decks, you're going to need some. And then maybe Terrapago CX. 2 energy if it's not your first turn, 30 for each bench Pokemon. And you know what? This fits into a lot of decks, and I think you need some around. There are other Pokemon here that I could mention, like the aforementioned Hydrapple, for instance. But like I've said, these are ones that I think you need in your binder because they could fit into a whole bunch of different decks. I personally really like Veluza and Crabominable, but again, you're either playing that deck or you're not. Now, in terms of trainers, you generally need 4 of everything because you don't know what's going to be good in the future. So your fossils, now these ones could be skipped, to be honest with you, because again, you only need them if you're playing a particular Pokemon, but I'd have them ready to go. Area 01 Decks lets you have 8 bench Pokemon. This is an absolute no-brainer. You definitely need 4 copies of this one. It lets you have 8 bench Pokemon if you got a Terra Pokemon in play. It is absolutely full-on ridiculously broken good. I called it the best card in the set the other day. You need 4 copies of this, and frankly, you need them quickly. This makes a lot of different decks a lot better than they were before. So take it from your old pal Wassy. This is a phenomenal card. Make sure you've got 4 of them. Briar, make sure you've got 4, but you're rarely ever going to play 4 in a deck, but you never know. If your opponent's got exactly 2 prize cards remaining, you play it, and then if you take a KO with a Terra Pokemon this turn, you get to take an extra prize. That's absurd. That is absolutely absurd. We already see it seeing play in a bunch of different Terra decks, and frankly, this is only going to keep going as we go along. It's not like we're going to turn around in 5 minutes' time and go, well, you know what? People are getting bored of this. Nah, mate. I assure you, this sees a lot of play now. It's going to keep seeing a lot of play in the future. You need this. Crispin, again, 4 copies. Crispin lets you search a deck for 2 basic energy of different types. 1 goes in your hand, 1 gets attached to a Pokemon. Especially now that we got all these Terra Pokemon that need 3 different types of energy. That's the hook, incidentally. They need 3 different types of energy. Yeah. You're going to need 4 copies of Crispin because, again, you may well end up playing 4 of these in a deck. This is an engine potentially here. These Terra Pokemon are awkward. Crispin helps out a lot. Deluxe Bomb is an Ace Spec. Obviously, you only need 1 of them. If it's attached to a Pokemon and they're damaged by an attack from your opponent's Pokemon, you put 12 damage counters on and discard the card. Yeah, I know that this is not seeing a huge amount of play and most decks aren't going to play it, but my deal with Ace Specs is really simple. Have 1 of every Ace Spec. Because you know what? You never know when you're going to turn around and need one. And do you really want to be that guy that's running around looking for a deluxe bomb last minute before an event? Personally, I do not. Glass Trumpet, you need 4 of these because, well, you need to have a Terra Pokemon in play. Fine. But choose 2 of your bench colorless Pokemon and attach a basic energy from your discard pile to each of them. It's a great card for any colorless deck. But then we remember there's a combo here with Blissey, because when you use this to attach to Blissey, you can now move the energy anywhere you like. Yeah. Also, if you didn't buy Blissey when Twilight Masquerade came out, add that to the buy list, would ya? Because Blissey is now absurd with Glass Trumpet. One of the very best cards in the set, you're going to need this. Grand Tree, it's an Ace Spec, you need 1 of them. Here, very simply, you get to search for a Stage 1 that evolves one of your Pokemon, and then if you want, the Stage 2 as well. Bunch of Stage 2 decks are going to play this to get evolution faster, and I'm a big fan of it. Gravity Gemstone is another 4 of. It increases the retreat cost of both active Pokemon by 1, while it's attached to your active. Yeah, decks are going to play this, they already are. Kofu lets you put 2 cards from your hand on the bottom of your deck, and then draw 4. If you're playing a combo-y kind of deck, or any deck that's generally going to have cards you don't mind putting on the bottom, this is a draw 4. Draw 4 is amazing. Not every deck can play this, but the ones that can are going to love it. And then, of course, you got stuff like Veluza, which becomes awesome. Lacey is another one. You're going to need 4 of these. Shove your hand into your deck, draw 4 cards. If your opponent's got 3 or fewer prize cards remaining, you draw 8 instead. Yes, I know it's no good in the early game. Yes, I know in the late game there's stuff like I&O you may prefer to play instead. I understand all of this. But this is a classic case of you never know exactly what decks are going to be around in a year or two when this is still legal. Get 4 of these, be prepared, jobs are good. Now, Ockerberry and Payapaberry, I'm really not a fan of. If they're attached to a Pokemon that's damaged by a particular Pokemon, here Fire and Psychic, then you take 60 less damage. But, you know what? If you're really worried about Psychic or Fire decks, these actually become great cards, so maybe it is actually still worth it. And then Sparkling Crystal is an Ace Spec, so you know the deal, you're gonna need one of them. Yes, I'm fully aware that it only works for Terra Pokemon, but it also reduces your attack cost by 1, and it's brilliant. And yeah, trust me, ladies and gentlemen, you need this. It also sees a huge amount of play right now already. There we go. There's your buy list. Full one is now up on the screen. These are the cards I think you need from Stellar Crown. Remember, when I do my buy list, it is cards you need in your binder, so you're not running around at events looking for cards. These are the cards which I think you might put into a bunch of decks. If there is a particular Pokemon you want to actually play to attack with, like I keep saying Hydrapple, then yeah, absolutely go and buy it. But otherwise, don't, because I don't think you're going to be playing it. There we go. You've been told. So now it's over to you guys. Tell me if there's any cards that you think are on this list that shouldn't be. Tell me if you think there's cards that aren't on this list that you think should be. Go nuts in the comment section, but be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi. That's where we talk about Pokemon and a whole bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all kinds of fun things. And get shoutouts on the channel like the lovely Unknown One, who's been a supporter of ours for a while now and is a very lovely person. So shout out to them for the support and the loveliness. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross and you've been watching PTCG Radio.